I'm Morgan Reynolds, 32, standing alone in my wedding dress at the Plaza Hotel, repeatedly checking my phone for messages that would never come. My parents deliberately skipped the most important day of my life because I refused to make my wedding less beautiful than my perfect sister Stephanie's. That morning, I discovered they weren't coming at all, after promising just yesterday they would. As guests began arriving for our Manhattan reception, I faced a devastating choice: collapse under the weight of family betrayal, or reclaim my day with the man who truly loves me unconditionally. Before I dive into this story, I'd love to know where you're watching from. Drop your location in the comments, hit that like button, and subscribe to join our community of survivors who've overcome family drama. Trust me, what happened next will show you exactly why sometimes standing your ground is the only way forward. Growing up in our sprawling Connecticut colonial home, I learned early that I would never measure up to my older sister Stephanie. 3 years, my senior at 35, she was the quintessential golden child, homecoming queen, valedictorian, and our parents' undeniable favorite. Every family photo on our mahogany staircase told the story. Stephanie center stage with her pageant crowns and honor roll certificates, while I stood awkwardly in the background, often partially cropped out. My parents, Richard and Catherine Reynolds, built their lives around appearances and status. Dad made his millions in commercial real estate, while Mom, a former Miss Connecticut runner-up, channeled her unrealized dreams through Stephanie. Our family attended the right country club, vacationed in the right places, and associated with the right people. In this carefully curated world, Stephanie fit perfectly. I was the perpetual disappointment. "Morgan, why can't you apply yourself like your sister?" became my father's standard greeting throughout high school. When I brought home a B+ in calculus after studying for weeks, his response was predictable: Stephanie never got anything less than an A in mathematics. When I made the volleyball team but not as captain, Mom sighed. Well, Stephanie was captain of 3 teams her junior year. My bedroom walls held my modest achievements: editor of the school newspaper, finalist in a regional marketing competition. But these paled beside Stephanie's shrine of accomplishments down the hall. During holiday gatherings, relatives would gush over Stephanie's latest triumph while asking me, almost as an afterthought, "And what are you up to these days, Morgan?" My answers never generated the same enthusiasm. Despite this, or perhaps because of it, I threw myself into building a life on my own terms. After college at NYU, not Harvard like Stephanie, I worked my way up to become a senior marketing executive at a top digital agency in Manhattan. My parents dismissed my career as playing on computers all day, while Stephanie's hospital administration role was saving lives through healthcare leadership. Then came Ryan West. We met at a charity gala where my agency was handling the marketing. Tall with kind brown eyes and an easy laugh, Ryan was the lead architect on a new children's hospital wing. Unlike the status-obsessed men my parents tried setting me up with, Ryan saw me, really saw me. On our third date, walking through Central Park, he asked about my childhood, and I found myself revealing the painful truth about my family. "Wait," he said, stopping to face me. "Your parents compared you to your sister when you won a national writing award? That's not normal, Morgan. That's toxic." It was the first time anyone had labeled my family dynamic for what it was. Ryan, raised by parents who celebrated both him and his brother for their individual strengths, was genuinely shocked by my stories. Through his eyes, I began to see how abnormal my normal had been. The first real conflict with my family came when I declined a holiday trip to Aspen to instead spend Christmas with Ryan's family in their modest Chicago home. My father called it embarrassing that I would choose middle-class mediocrity over our family tradition. My mother cried about how I was tearing the family apart. Stephanie texted hourly updates about how much fun everyone was having without me. But at the West's warm kitchen table, eating homemade cinnamon rolls and playing board games where no one kept score, I experienced what family could feel like when love wasn't conditional on achievement or appearance. When Ryan's mother hugged me goodbye, whispering, "You're a gift to our family," something inside me permanently shifted. I started setting boundaries with my parents, which they interpreted as betrayal. The stage was already being set for the wedding drama that would eventually unfold. "You've changed since meeting that architect," my mother accused during one tense Sunday brunch. What she really meant was, I'd stopped accepting their treatment as normal, and there was no going back. Ryan proposed on a snowy December evening at the Metropolitan Museum of Art in the Temple of Dendur. He'd arranged for us to have the space to ourselves for 15 minutes, a feat that required calling in several professional favors. As light filtered through the massive windows overlooking Central Park, he knelt beside the ancient Egyptian temple. "Morgan, you've taught me what courage looks like," he said, his voice echoing slightly in the cavernous space. "The way you've built a beautiful life despite everything. I want to build our future together. Will you marry me?" The vintage emerald-cut diamond had belonged to his grandmother. It wasn't as large as the 5-carat rock Bradley had given Stephanie, but its history and meaning made it infinitely more precious to me. When I called my parents with the news, their reaction was predictably tepid. "Oh, so Ryan finally proposed," my mother said, managing to sound both bored and slightly disappointed. "I suppose we should meet his parents properly now." My father immediately asked about Ryan's career prospects, seemingly deaf to my explanation that he was already a partner at one of the most prestigious architectural firms in New York. "Architecture is so unpredictable," he commented. "Not like medicine. Bradley's practice is already bringing in 7 figures, and he's only been Stephanie's husband for a year." Ah, yes. Stephanie and Bradley. Their wedding 18 months earlier had been the society event of the season, a 300-guest extravaganza at the Westchester Country Club with a 10-piece orchestra, custom-built dance floor over the swimming pool, and a 7-tier cake featured in Bride's magazine. My parents had spent over $200,000 and invited every business associate, country club member, and distant relative they could find. I had served as maid of honor, smiling through the entire weekend while hearing variations of "Someday it will be your turn, dear," from well-meaning guests. What no one knew was how Stephanie had turned into a nightmare during planning, throwing tantrums until she got exactly what she wanted. My parents not only indulged her but encouraged her perfectionism. Ryan and I wanted something different. We envisioned an elegant but personal celebration that reflected our actual relationships, not my parents' business connections. We dreamed of a sophisticated city wedding, Art Deco styling to honor Ryan's architectural passion, and gourmet food that meant something to us. I wanted deep burgundies and midnight blues rather than Stephanie's blush pink and cream palette. The first warning sign came when I mentioned looking at the plaza as our venue. My mother's face tightened. "The plaza? Isn't that a bit much? What about the Westport Inn? It's much more modest but still lovely." The Westport Inn was where my second cousins had held their wedding receptions, perfectly nice but decidedly less prestigious than Stephanie's country club affair. The message was clear. My wedding shouldn't outshine my sister's. When Ryan and I created our initial guest list of 175 people, significantly smaller than Stephanie's event, my father frowned. "You're inviting the Hendersons but not the Blakesleys? The Blakesleys have been business associates for 20 years. Dad, I've met the Blakesleys exactly twice. We want people we actually know at our wedding." "This unnecessary extravagance shows a lack of maturity," he responded, ignoring my point entirely. Stephanie understood the social importance of her wedding. What became increasingly clear was that Stephanie's wedding had been about my parents' social standing. They expected mine to be smaller, simpler, and less significant, because that reflected the hierarchy they'd established between their daughters. The breaking point came when we toured the plaza. The grand ballroom with its crystal chandeliers and gilded moldings took my breath away. Ryan, watching my face, squeezed my hand and whispered, "This is it." That evening, we put down a deposit, then called my parents with the news. My father exploded. "You did what without consulting us? This is exactly the kind of impulsive, attention-seeking behavior that's always been your problem, Morgan." "Richard," my mother interjected with forced calmness, Let's be reasonable. Morgan, dear, if you want us to contribute financially to this wedding, you'll need to tone it down. We can't have people thinking we're trying to outdo Stephanie's beautiful day. There it was, the ultimatum, wrapped in my mother's faux sweet voice. Keep yourself smaller than Stephanie, or we won't support you. Actually, Ryan said, speaking up on the call, we're prepared to pay for the wedding ourselves. Morgan deserves her dream day just as much as Stephanie did. The silence that followed was deafening. Finally, my father spoke, his voice cold. If that's how you want to play this, fine. But don't expect us to participate in this spectacle. After hanging up, I broke down in tears. Not because I was giving up the plaza, but because I was finally seeing my family clearly. Ryan held me as reality sank in. My parents weren't capable of celebrating me as I was. They never had been. We're doing this, I said finally, wiping my eyes. I'm done making myself smaller. What I didn't realize then was just how far my family would go to put me back in my place. The decision to finance our own wedding shifted something fundamental in my relationship with my parents. For the first time, I had removed their primary tool of control, money. Their shock was palpable in the strained phone calls and terse text messages that followed. We're just concerned about appearances, my mother said during one particularly tense call. People will think you're trying to compete with your sister. Mom, this isn't about Stephanie. It's about creating a day that represents Ryan and me. Of course you would say that, she replied with a sigh. You've always been jealous of your sister's accomplishments. 2 days later, Stephanie herself called, her voice dripping with concern. Mom and Dad are really hurt, Morgan. They just want what's best for you. Why are you being so difficult about this? Difficult? I repeated, feeling my chest tighten. Is that what they're calling it when I make my own choices? They spent years building connections that benefited both of us, she continued. The least you could do is consider their feelings instead of being so spiteful. Spiteful? For wanting my own wedding? We all know what you're doing, she said, her fake sweetness dropping away. You've always had to one-up me. It's honestly pathetic. The conversation left me shaking with anger. Ryan suggested a family dinner to clear the air, thinking that face-to-face communication might help. Naively, I agreed. We met at Tavern on the Green, neutral territory in Central Park. For 20 minutes, everything remained superficially pleasant as we discussed safe topics. The weather, Ryan's latest project, Dad's golf game. Then my mother brought up the wedding flowers. I heard you're using bloom and petal. They're so expensive. The arrangements they did for the Goldstein's daughter were gaudy. We love their work, I replied carefully. They understand our vision. Your vision, my father snorted. Since when did weddings become about visions instead of practical celebrations? In my day, times change, Mr. Reynolds, Ryan interjected politely. Clearly, my father responded coldly. Along with respect for parents, the dam broke. 29 years of resentment came flooding out as I finally confronted my family. Respect? I said, my voice rising despite my best efforts. Was it respectful to compare me to Stephanie my entire life? To make me feel like I was never good enough? To dismiss my career, my choices, my entire identity? Morgan! My mother looked around, mortified that other diners might hear. You're making a scene. No, Mom. For once, I'm speaking the truth. You and Dad have always treated Stephanie like she hung the moon, and me like an afterthought. And I'm done accepting it. Stephanie's eyes welled with tears, right on cue. How can you say that? I've only ever supported you. Really? Like when you told Allison I was going through a phase when I got promoted? Or when you suggested Ryan was with me because successful architects usually have plain wives? Ryan's head snapped up. She said what? Stephanie's tears fell faster as our parents moved to comfort her. See how you hurt your sister? My father growled. This is exactly the problem. Your jealousy has always... Jealousy? Ryan interrupted, his normally calm demeanor cracking. Sir, with all due respect, I've never seen Morgan jealous of anyone. What I have seen is her work twice as hard for half the recognition from her family. My father's face reddened. You know nothing about our family dynamic, young man. I know that Morgan deserves parents who celebrate her successes instead of diminishing them, Ryan replied evenly. I know she deserves a sister who supports her instead of undermining her. We should go, I said, gathering my purse as Stephanie sobbed theatrically into my mother's shoulder. As we stood to leave, my father delivered his parting shot. Fix your attitude, Morgan, or don't expect us to pretend to support this ridiculous wedding. Walking out of the restaurant, I felt simultaneously terrified and liberated. Ryan held my hand tightly as we made our way through Central Park, neither of us speaking until we reached the fountain. I'm proud of you, he said finally. My phone rang at midnight, my mother, predictably. Your father and I are very disappointed in your behavior, she began without preamble. Stephanie is devastated. Mom, You need to apologize to everyone, Morgan. Then we can discuss scaling back this wedding to something more appropriate. For the first time in my life, I didn't cave to the guilt trip. No, Mom, I won't apologize for speaking my truth. And I won't make my wedding smaller to protect Stephanie's ego or your social hierarchy. The silence stretched between us before she responded, her voice icy. Then I don't see how we can support this event. Don't say we didn't warn you. As I hung up, I realized something had fundamentally changed. The old Morgan would have immediately called back, apologizing, backtracking, doing anything to regain their approval. But that Morgan didn't exist anymore. In her place stood someone stronger, someone who finally understood that their approval came at too high a price. With my family drama simmering in the background, I threw myself into planning our dream wedding. Ryan and I hired Jessica Winters, one of Manhattan's most sought-after wedding planners, who listened to our vision with genuine enthusiasm. The Plaza's grand ballroom with an Art Deco twist? Absolutely stunning, she said during our first meeting. Let's create something unforgettable. Over the next months, we selected details that reflected our story. A custom dance floor with an inlaid design based on Ryan's favorite architectural patterns. A menu featuring elevated versions of dishes from our favorite dates. A signature cocktail named after the street where we first met. Each choice felt meaningful, personal, and completely us. I couldn't help noticing that many of our selections were more elegant than Stephanie's wedding had been. Her country club celebration, while expensive, had followed safe, traditional choices. Our city wedding was becoming a unique artistic statement, exactly what I'd always wanted and had never been allowed to have. The passive-aggressive texts from my family started almost immediately. Just saw your florist's Instagram, my mother wrote one afternoon. Those centerpieces look awfully tall. People won't be able to see each other across the table. Stephanie's were much more considerate. Another day. Rivalry chairs at the plaza? So expected. Stephanie's farm tables and crossback chairs were featured in that bridal blog. I stopped responding after a while, sharing the messages with Ryan and Jessica instead. We would laugh about them during our planning sessions, turning them into a bizarre game. Let's play What Would Stephanie Do? Jessica suggested once, making me snort champagne through my nose during a cake tasting, and then do exactly the opposite. My bridesmaids, college friends and coworkers who actually supported me, noticed the family tension during our first dress shopping appointment. Where's your mom? Asked Kate, my roommate from NYU. She's taking a back seat in the planning, I said diplomatically. My oldest friend Allison, who had witnessed my family dynamic since childhood, gave me a knowing look. Their loss, she said firmly, helping me into a beaded Jenny Packham gown that made us both gasp. The bridal shower, hosted by Allison at a chic rooftop restaurant, became the next battlefield. My mother and Stephanie arrived 45 minutes late, making a grand entrance that interrupted the gift opening. Traffic was absolutely dreadful, my mother announced, though Allison later confirmed there had been no traffic issues that day. Throughout the shower, they criticized everything from the signature mocktails, so sweet, to the floral arrangements. A bit much for a shower, don't you think? I maintained my composure, determined not to let them ruin another event. Then came Stephanie's moment. As I opened a beautiful crystal picture frame from Ryan's mother, Stephanie suddenly stood up, tapping her glass for attention. I wasn't going to say anything yet, she began, her hand drifting to her stomach, but since we're celebrating new beginnings, Bradley and I are expecting. The room erupted in congratulations while I sat frozen, the half-unwrapped gift in my lap. It wasn't the news itself. I would have been genuinely happy for her under different circumstances, but the calculated timing, my shower, my celebration, and once again, Stephanie had made it about her. Congratulations, I managed, as guests flocked to her for details. Later, when I went to the restroom to compose myself, Stephanie followed me in. Perfect timing on your announcement, I said, reapplying my lipstick with a steady hand. Was that planned or just a happy coincidence? Don't be petty, Morgan, she replied, checking her reflection. It's not like I planned to get pregnant just to overshadow your little shower. Little shower? The one you criticized from the moment you arrived? She turned to face me directly. You want to know the truth? I'm tired of you suddenly acting like you're better than us. Your fancy job, your architect fiancé, this over-the-top wedding. Who are you trying to impress? I'm not trying to impress anyone. That's the difference between us, Stephanie. I'm making choices for myself, not for Mom and Dad's approval. Something flickered across her face. Anger, certainly, but something else too. Insecurity? You have no idea what it's like, she said, her voice dropping. Being the perfect daughter isn't easy. They expect me to be flawless, always. For a moment, I glimpsed the weight of my parents' expectations on her, a different burden than mine, but a burden nonetheless. The moment of understanding vanished as quickly as it had appeared. But at least I'm not selfish, she continued, her tone hardening again. At least I consider how my actions affect the family. This wedding of yours is embarrassing everyone. The only thing embarrassing is how threatened you all are by me finally standing up for myself. She shook her head. You'll regret this, Morgan, when you look back at your wedding photos and don't see your family there. Is that a threat? It's a reality check. Mom and Dad won't come if you keep this up. Is your pride worth that? When she left, I locked myself in a stall and finally let the tears fall. Later that night, I broke down in Ryan's arms, questioning everything. Maybe we should scale back, I sobbed. Maybe it's not worth losing my family over. Ryan held me tight, but pulled back to look me in the eyes. Morgan, this isn't just about a wedding anymore. This is about whether you'll spend your entire life dimming your light to make them comfortable. This is about breaking a pattern that will follow us into our marriage, our future children's lives, everything. He wiped my tears with his thumb. If we back down now, they'll know they can always control you with guilt and threats. Is that the foundation you want for our marriage? His words resonated with a truth I'd been avoiding. This wasn't about centerpieces or venues or even one day of celebration. This was about the life we would build together, and whether my family's toxic dynamics would be allowed to poison it. No, I said finally. I don't want that. For us or for any children we might have someday. I thought about potential daughters who might someday look to me as an example. What would I want them to learn? That they should make themselves smaller to keep the peace? Or that they deserve to shine without apology? The answer became clear. Whatever happened with my family, I couldn't go back to being the person who accepted their treatment as normal. Not anymore. The invitation crisis erupted 6 weeks before the wedding. My parents had submitted a list of 50 essential guests, business associates, and social connections who had never been part of our lives but had attended Stephanie's wedding. These people expect to be invited. My father insisted during a rare direct phone call. It would be a significant business slight to exclude them now. Dad, we're keeping our guest list to people who actually know and care about us. We're at capacity. Capacity? At the plaza? Don't be ridiculous. Add these names immediately. No, I said simply. The silence that followed was thunderous. No? He repeated, as if I'd spoken in a foreign language. No. This is our wedding, not a networking event. His voice turned cold. I see. Well, if you insist on embarrassing this family, that's your choice. The following weekend, I went dress shopping, the final fitting for my gown, a sleek, modern creation with Art Deco beading and a dramatic back. I'd invited my mother, holding on to a sliver of hope that she'd want to share this traditional mother-daughter moment. She declined via text, too busy helping Stephanie with nursery planning. Allison came instead, tears welling in her eyes when I emerged from the dressing room. "Morgan, you look absolutely stunning," she whispered. The bridal consultant smiled. "Much more fashion-forward than your sister's dress," she commented, unaware of the landmine she'd stepped on. "I remember her traditional ball gown when she was here. This is so uniquely you." I froze, waiting for the familiar stab of guilt at outshining Stephanie. Instead, I felt something new. Pride. This dress, like the wedding itself, represented my emergence from her shadow. That evening, my father called, his voice tight with controlled fury. "Your mother tells me you've chosen quite the extravagant dress. How would she know? She declined to come to my fitting. Don't be smart with me. We've heard about it. Nearly twice what Stephanie spent, from what we understand." I sat down, stunned. "Are you tracking my wedding expenses?" "We're concerned about appearances," he replied, not denying it. "This competition with your sister has gone too far." "Dad, I'm not competing with—" "Enough," he interrupted. "Your mother and I have discussed this at length. We've come to a decision." My heart pounded as he continued. "Either you make substantial changes to bring this wedding in line with something less flashy than Stephanie's, or we will not attend. Period." Despite anticipating this moment, hearing the ultimatum spoken aloud knocked the air from my lungs. "You would miss my wedding? Over this?" "The choice is yours, Morgan. Think carefully about what matters more. This one day of showing off, or your relationship with your family." After hanging up, I sat motionless for nearly an hour, his words echoing in my mind. Then my phone buzzed with a text from Stephanie. "Dad told me what happened. I'm trying to help here. Maybe we can compromise? Coffee tomorrow?" Feeling emotionally drained and desperate for resolution, I agreed to meet her at our usual cafe near Central Park. It was a mistake. "They're just trying to protect you from yourself," Stephanie said, stirring her latte. "You've always been impulsive. Remember when you chopped off all your hair before prom?" "Steph, I was 16. I'm 32 now, running a department and marrying the love of my life. This isn't a haircut." "Still," she persisted, "is one day really worth destroying your relationship with mom and dad? With me?" Her faux concerned strategy shifted when she realized it wasn't working. "They're serious about not coming, you know. And honestly, I won't be there either if you continue with this spectacle." "Because your wedding has to remain the family standard?" I asked quietly. Her eyes flashed. "Because you're being selfish. This isn't just about you. Actually, my wedding day is precisely about Ryan and me. Not about mom and dad's business connections. Not about maintaining some bizarre family hierarchy where you always come first." She leaned forward, dropping her voice. "Do you really want to be that person? The sad bride with no family at her wedding? Because that's where this is heading." After leaving Stephanie, I suffered my first full-blown panic attack in years. Sitting on a park bench, unable to breathe, I called Ryan in desperation. He left a client meeting to find me, holding me until my breathing normalized. "I don't know what to do," I confessed, once I could speak again. "Part of me wants to cave just to have them there." Ryan considered this carefully before responding. "What would that mean for us going forward? Every major life decision, our home, how we raise children, holiday celebrations, would come with the same threat. Do it our way, or we won't be part of it." He was right. This wasn't just about a wedding anymore. That evening we met with Jessica, our wedding planner, who had become not just a vendor but a friend throughout this process. "Have you considered family counseling before the wedding?" she suggested gently. "I've seen it help other families in conflict." It seemed like a reasonable compromise. I called my parents that night and, choosing my words carefully, suggested we meet with a family therapist, my treat, to work through these issues before the wedding. My mother's response was chilling. "We don't need a stranger telling us how to parent, Morgan. We're not the ones with the problem." With that final door closed, I made my decision. I wrote an email to my parents and Stephanie, calm, loving, but firm, explaining that while I loved them and wanted them at my wedding, I would not be making changes to appease them. I laid out the pattern of favoritism throughout my life, my hope for healing in the future, but my unwillingness to continue the pattern. My wedding will proceed as planned, I concluded. I hope with all my heart that you'll be there to share in our joy. But if you choose not to attend, I will respect your decision, though I'll never stop hoping for reconciliation on healthier terms. Their response came in the form of silence, a silence that stretched through days, then weeks, as we finalized the last details of our celebration. Just when I'd accepted they wouldn't respond at all, 2 days before the wedding, a text arrived from my mother. Your father and I have reconsidered. We'll be there. Please reserve 3 seats in the front row. Relief flooded through me. Despite everything, a small part of me had continued to hope for resolution. I immediately texted Jessica to update the seating chart, then called Ryan with the news. That's unexpected, he said cautiously. Do you think they've had a genuine change of heart? I don't know, I admitted, but I'm willing to give them the chance. I should have known better. 1 month before the wedding, in a last desperate attempt at reconciliation, I had arranged a family therapy session with Dr. Molina, a specialist in family estrangement. My parents had reluctantly agreed after I'd pleaded with them, though they made their skepticism clear. We're only doing this because we love you, my mother said, her tone suggesting she was making an enormous sacrifice. We gathered in Dr. Molina's warm office overlooking Madison Avenue. My parents, Stephanie, Ryan, and me. The tension was palpable as we sat in a circle, no one making eye contact. Dr. Molina began gently, asking each of us to share our perspective on the wedding conflict without interruption. I went first, my voice shaking as I described the lifelong pattern of favoritism and how the wedding had become the breaking point. Ryan spoke next, diplomatically focusing on his concern for my emotional well-being rather than attacking my family. Stephanie followed, framing herself as the innocent bystander to my unreasonable behavior. Then came my father, his face reddening as he spoke. Morgan has always been competitive with her sister. This wedding is just another attempt to outshine Stephanie. She's making it about expensive showing off rather than family values. My mother nodded in agreement. We've always treated our girls equally. Morgan chooses to perceive slights where none exist. Dr. Molina listened attentively before asking a simple question. Can anyone recall a time when Morgan received recognition or celebration that Stephanie didn't? The silence was deafening. Conversely, she continued, can you recall instances where Stephanie's achievements were celebrated in ways Morgan's weren't? My father shifted uncomfortably. That's not a fair question. Stephanie simply had more achievements to celebrate. With respect, Mr. Reynolds, Dr. Molina said gently, that response itself demonstrates a bias. You've immediately defended the differential treatment rather than considering its impact. My mother stood abruptly. I'm not paying for someone to accuse us of being bad parents. Richard, we're leaving. Actually, I'm covering this session, I said quietly. Please stay. I'm trying to save our relationship. There's nothing to save if you insist on painting us as villains, my father responded, also standing. This wedding drama is entirely your creation, Morgan. When you're ready to be reasonable, you know where to find us. They walked out, Stephanie hesitating momentarily before following them. The session had lasted exactly 22 minutes. Dr. Molina turned to Ryan and me with compassion in her eyes. I'm sorry that didn't go as hoped. Unfortunately, this reaction is common when family systems are confronted with patterns they're not ready to acknowledge. 2 weeks before the wedding, I received a strange call from our florist, Sophia, just confirming the change to the centerpieces, she said cheerfully. The lower arrangements with more greenery will still be beautiful. What change? I asked, confused. We finalized the tall crystal designs months ago. Sophia hesitated. Someone called yesterday. She said she was your sister and had your authorization to make the change. She had all your account details. My blood ran cold. I never authorized any changes. After hanging up, I systematically called every vendor. Sure enough, Stephanie had contacted most of them, attempting to change elements of our wedding to be less flashy. The cake designer, the lighting team, even our photographer, too. She'd tried to modify everything to be more modest, more traditional, more like her wedding. Thankfully, most vendors had verification processes that prevented the changes, but the betrayal cut deep. This wasn't just about my parents anymore. Stephanie had actively tried to sabotage my day. I confronted her via text, attaching emails from vendors as evidence. Her response was unapologetic. I was trying to help before you embarrass yourself. Mom and Dad won't come if you keep this up, and you know it. This crossed a line I couldn't ignore. I called my parents, shaking with anger and hurt. Did you know Stephanie was contacting my vendors behind my back? We suggested she try to help you scale back, my mother admitted without hesitation. You're being unreasonable, so intervention was necessary. Intervention? This is my wedding. It's a family event, my father countered. One that reflects on all of us. Stephanie understands this. You refuse to. In that moment, with crystal clarity, I realized there would be no resolution, no happy reconciliation before the wedding. The pattern was too entrenched, their perspectives too rigid. I need to say something, and I need you both to hear me, I said, my voice steadier than I felt. For 29 years, I've lived in Stephanie's shadow. I've watched you celebrate her every accomplishment while dismissing mine. I've altered my behavior, my dreams, my self-image to try to earn your approval. Taking a deep breath, I continued. But I can't do it anymore. Not with my wedding, not with my marriage, not with any future children we might have. This cycle stops here. So dramatic, my mother sighed. This victim narrative is beneath you, Morgan. It's not a narrative, Mom. It's my lived experience. And if you can't acknowledge that, if you can't be happy for me without conditions, then I don't want you at my wedding. My father's voice turned to ice. Careful what you wish for. I'm not wishing for anything except parents who can love both their daughters equally. Who can celebrate my happiness without comparing it to Stephanie's? Who can see me for who I am, not who they wish I was? Your wedding is nothing but showing off, he spat. Unlike Stephanie's tasteful celebration of love, the words hung between us, confirming everything I'd tried to deny for years. To them, Stephanie would always be the measure of what was right and good. I would always be the disappointment, the competition, the problem. Then don't come, I said quietly. I officially uninvite you all. I won't have people at my wedding who see it as a competition rather than a celebration. After hanging up, I blocked their numbers temporarily, not permanently, but enough to give myself space to prepare for the most important day of my life without their continued manipulation. The silence from my family in the days leading up to the wedding was both painful and peaceful. Ryan's family stepped up magnificently. His mother Diane treating me like the daughter she'd never had, helping with last-minute details and providing emotional support. Then, the night before the wedding, my phone buzzed with a text from an unfamiliar number. My mother, using her friend's phone to bypass my block. Your father and I have reconsidered. We'll attend tomorrow. Please save us seats in the front row. Hope flickered in my chest, despite everything. Maybe they'd realized what they were losing. Maybe we could begin healing after all. Thank you, I responded simply. That means everything to me. I fell asleep believing that, somehow, my wedding day would include my family after all. I couldn't have imagined what would happen next. The morning of my wedding dawned clear and bright, Manhattan's skyline crisp against a perfect blue October sky. I woke in my suite at the plaza, momentarily disoriented before remembering, today, I would marry Ryan. My bridesmaids arrived at 9, bringing champagne and breakfast. The atmosphere was celebratory as hair and makeup artists transformed us one by one. I felt a nervous excitement building, and yes, a tentative hope about my family's attendance. Have you heard anything more from them? Allison asked quietly, as we had a moment alone. Just that text saying they'll be here, I replied. I'm trying not to overthink it. Allison squeezed my hand. Whatever happens, today is about you and Ryan. Remember that. By noon, I was fully dressed in my gown, my hair swept into an elegant updo with Art Deco pins that had belonged to Ryan's grandmother. The photographer captured shots of us laughing, toasting, helping with final touches. Every few minutes, I checked my phone, expecting some update from my mother about their arrival time. Nothing. They're probably just running late, I told myself, though doubt was beginning to creep in. At 1:30, as guests began arriving for the two ceremony, I received a text, not from my parents, but from my mother's friend Elaine. Morgan, I'm so sorry to tell you this. Your parents asked me to let you know they've decided not to attend after all. They said you would understand why. The phone slipped from my fingers, clattering to the floor. The chatter in the suite faded to white noise as I struggled to breathe. Morgan, what is it? Allison rushed to my side, picking up the phone and reading the message. Her face hardened, those manipulative, cruel. I couldn't speak, couldn't move. They had waited until the last possible moment, until I would be most vulnerable, most publicly humiliated, to withdraw their promise. It wasn't just absence, it was calculated emotional sabotage. The makeup artist hovered anxiously with her brushes. Do you need a touch-up, honey, for the tears? But I wasn't crying. I was somewhere beyond tears, in a strange, hollow space where nothing felt quite real. A knock at the door broke the silence. It was Jessica, our wedding planner, looking concerned. Morgan? Ryan sent me to check on you. He's worried because your parents haven't arrived yet. The reality of the situation hit me all at once. They're not coming, I said, my voice sounding distant to my own ears. They never were. The text last night was just one final mind game. Jessica's professional calm momentarily cracked. I don't even have words. What do? I whispered, looking around the room at my friends' stricken faces. I don't have anyone to walk me down the aisle. We planned a father-daughter dance. Everyone will know they boycotted my wedding. From the doorway came another voice. Diane, Ryan's mother. She must have heard everything. May I come in? She asked gently. I nodded, unable to speak as she crossed the room and took my hands in hers. Morgan, listen to me. I cannot imagine the pain you're feeling right now. What your parents have done is unforgivable. She brushed a strand of hair from my face with maternal tenderness. But you have a choice in this moment. You can let their cruelty define this day, or you can choose joy despite them. Everyone will know, I repeated, the thought of public humiliation almost worse than the betrayal itself. Yes, she acknowledged, and they will witness your strength. They will see a woman who chose love and authenticity over emotional manipulation. They will watch you walk down that aisle with your head held high, maybe alone, maybe with someone else, but on your own terms. Something shifted inside me at her words. The hollow feeling gave way to something else. Not happiness, certainly, but a steely determination. If this was my parents' final attempt to control me, to punish me for failing to diminish myself, I would not give them the satisfaction of succeeding. You're right, I said, straightening my shoulders. Jessica, we need to make some quick changes to the program. No mention of the father-daughter dance, and I'll walk myself down the aisle. Allison stepped forward. Are you sure? One of us could walk with you, or maybe Ryan's dad? I considered this briefly before shaking my head. No, I've spent my life looking for approval and support from people who couldn't give it. Today, I'm choosing myself. I'm walking alone. The next hour passed in a blur of activity. Programs adjusted, seating rearranged, musicians informed of changed cues. By the time I stood at the back of the ballroom, waiting for the processional to begin, I had moved beyond shock into a strange, calm clarity. Through the partially opened doors, I could see Ryan waiting at the altar, scanning the crowd periodically with a worried expression. He knew. Of course he knew by now. As the bridesmaids processed one by one, Jessica squeezed my arm. Ready? I nodded. Ready. The doors opened fully. The music swelled. Every guest rose and turned to look at me, many with sympathy or confusion in their eyes. As they registered, I stood alone. I took a deep breath and began my walk. With each step, I felt something unexpected, not shame or abandonment, but a profound sense of coming into my own power. I wasn't walking toward Ryan as a gift from my father to another man, as tradition might dictate. I was walking toward him as a whole person, choosing him freely and completely. When Ryan's eyes met mine, they were filled with tears. He knew exactly what this solitary walk had cost me, and what it represented. As I reached him, he whispered, "You are the bravest person I've ever known." The ceremony proceeded beautifully. We exchanged the vows we'd written ourselves, promising to create a family built on mutual respect and unconditional love. When the officiant pronounced us husband and wife, the applause seemed to carry an extra measure of approval and support, as if our guests were not just celebrating our union, but affirming my choice to break free. It wasn't until the reception, during what would have been the father-daughter dance, that the grief finally caught up with me. As the space on the dance floor remained conspicuously empty, I felt the absence of my family like a physical wound. Ryan found me near the windows, looking out at the twinkling lights of Central Park. "I know there's nothing I can say to make this better," he said softly. "But I want you to know that I see you, Morgan. All of you. And you are magnificent exactly as you are." In that moment, surrounded by darkness but looking toward the light, I began to understand that this painful day was not just an ending, but a beginning. The start of a life where I would no longer shrink myself to accommodate others' insecurities, especially not those who claim to love me. The wedding continued around us, beautiful, joyful, exactly as we had planned it. And if there were empty seats at the family table, there was no emptiness in my heart as I danced with my husband, celebrated with friends, and began writing the first chapter of a new story, one where I finally, unapologetically, claimed the leading role. Despite the gaping absence of my family, our reception bloomed into something unexpectedly magical. The plaza's grand ballroom glowed under crystal chandeliers and hundreds of candles, the Art Deco details we'd chosen reflecting light in mesmerizing patterns. Friends and Ryan's family filled the space with genuine warmth, creating a protective circle of love around us. When it came time for speeches, Ryan stepped to the microphone, his eyes finding mine across the room. I tensed, wondering how he would address my family's absence. "Today I married a woman who taught me what courage looks like," he began, his voice steady. "Morgan shows me every day what it means to live authentically, to choose joy even when it's difficult, to stand firm in your truth even when it would be easier to compromise." He paused, taking a breath. "Some people couldn't be here today, and while that brings sadness, it doesn't diminish what we're celebrating. Sometimes, building something beautiful requires letting go of what no longer serves you. Today isn't about absence, it's about presence, about choosing who and what will be part of our story going forward." Tears slid down my cheeks, but for the first time that day, they weren't entirely tears of pain. Ryan had acknowledged the reality without letting it overtake our celebration. After dinner came an unexpected moment. Jessica approached me, looking slightly mysterious. "There's a surprise for you," she said. "A gift from someone who couldn't be here in person." The lights dimmed, and a screen lowered at the front of the ballroom. The video began playing, showing my Aunt Helen, my mother's estranged sister, whom I hadn't seen in years. "Morgan," she began, her familiar smile warming me instantly. "I wish I could be there today. Your mother and I haven't spoken in 15 years, as you know, but your wedding announcement made it into the society pages, and I couldn't let this day pass without reaching out," she continued, her voice growing serious. "What you may not know is why your mother and I became estranged. I refused to play the role she assigned me, the less successful sister who would never outshine her. Sound familiar?" My hand flew to my mouth in shock. This family pattern goes back generations. Your grandmother did it to your mother, who did it to me, and now to you. But you, brave girl, are breaking the chain. Her eyes glistened with tears. I'm so proud of you for refusing to make yourself smaller, for having the wedding you want, for marrying the man you love, for living your truth despite the cost. The video continued with Aunt Helen sharing stories I'd never heard, showing family photos I'd never seen. It concluded with her raising a glass. To Morgan and Ryan, may you build the family you deserve, one based on genuine love, not competition and control. As the screen raised and the lights came back up, the room erupted in applause. Ryan's arm tightened around me as I absorbed this unexpected gift. The knowledge that I wasn't alone in my experience, that someone else understood exactly what I'd been through. Throughout the reception, friends created impromptu moments to fill gaps left by my family's absence. Allison's father asked for a dance. Ryan's business partner gave an additional toast. My college roommate shared embarrassing stories that had the whole room laughing. Slowly, the sharp edges of pain began to soften, not disappearing but becoming manageable. We danced until after midnight, reluctant to let the perfect evening end. When we finally retired to our suite, exhausted but happy, Ryan pulled me close. "Regrets?" he asked quietly. I considered the question carefully. About marrying you? Not one. About standing my ground with my family? No, though I wish it hadn't come to this. They might come around, he suggested gently, given time. Maybe, I replied, though I wasn't convinced. But if they do, it'll have to be on different terms. I can't go back to who I was before. The first attempt at contact came 3 days later, while we were still in our honeymoon suite before departing for Bali. My mother texted, "Saw photos online. The flowers looked expensive. Hope you're happy now." Not congratulations, not I'm sorry we missed it. Just another dig, another comparison, another attempt to make me feel guilty for celebrating in a way that didn't center Stephanie. I showed Ryan the message, then deleted it without responding. For the first time in my life, I felt no compulsion to smooth things over, to apologize for taking up space, to make my mother feel better at my own expense. Bali was a revelation. 2 weeks of beauty, adventure, and healing far from family drama. In open-air restaurants, overlooking rice terraces, and on beaches with sand like powder, Ryan and I had deep conversations about family patterns and how we would approach our own marriage and potential future children differently. "I never want our kids to feel compared to each other," I said one evening, watching the sunset from our private villa. "I want them to know they're loved for exactly who they are." "They will," Ryan promised. "We both know exactly what not to do." We returned home to a flood of messages from my family. Texts, voicemails, and emails ranging from guilt trips to outright attacks. From my father, "Your behavior has deeply wounded your mother. When you're ready to apologize, we'll discuss moving forward." From my mother, "I don't understand how you could be so selfish. After everything we've done for you." From Stephanie, "Mom's been crying for days. Hope your little rebellion was worth destroying the family." Not one acknowledged their role in the situation. Not one recognized the pain they had caused by their deliberate absence. With Ryan's support, I crafted a simple response that I sent to all 3 of them. "I'm open to rebuilding our relationship when you're ready to acknowledge the pattern of favoritism that led to this situation. I love you, but I will no longer accept being treated as less important than Stephanie. The ball is in your court." Then I silenced notifications from their numbers and focused on building my new life as Mrs. Morgan West. The weeks that followed brought a strange mix of grief and liberation. I mourned the family I wished I had while celebrating the freedom of no longer bending myself to fit their expectations. In therapy, I worked through complex emotions: guilt, anger, sadness, and relief, all tangled together. "Estrangement is sometimes described as a living loss," my therapist explained. "You're grieving people who are still alive. That brings its own unique challenges." Social media became difficult to navigate. Photos from our wedding generated hundreds of likes and comments, which triggered a passive-aggressive posting spree from Stephanie, showcasing her perfect family life with Bradley and their coming baby. I eventually muted her accounts for my own peace of mind. As Thanksgiving approached, the first major holiday after the wedding, my mother called with a carefully casual invitation. "We expect you and Ryan at 2 o'clock. Stephanie and Bradley are bringing the cranberry sauce." No acknowledgement of the wedding drama, no apology. Just an assumption that holiday traditions would continue unchanged, that I would slot back into my assigned role as the lesser daughter. "I'm sorry, Mom, but we won't be there this year," I replied calmly. "What do you mean you won't be there? It's Thanksgiving." "Yes, and after what happened at our wedding, we need more time and conversation before we're ready for family gatherings." Her voice hardened. "So you're punishing us?" "Very mature, Morgan." "It's not punishment, Mom. It's a boundary. I love you, but I can't pretend everything is fine when it isn't." After hanging up, I felt a familiar wave of guilt, followed by something new. Pride in having stood my ground despite the emotional pressure. We spent Thanksgiving with Ryan's family instead, a boisterous, loving gathering where no one was measuring their worth against anyone else's. The contrast to my family's carefully orchestrated, status-conscious holidays couldn't have been starker. Then came a surprising development. One December afternoon, Stephanie appeared at our apartment door, visibly pregnant and looking uncharacteristically nervous. "Can we talk?" she asked. "Alone?" Ryan made himself scarce while Stephanie and I sat awkwardly in our living room. "I've been thinking about what you said," she began hesitantly. "About the favoritism thing." I remained silent, waiting. "When you first complained about it, I thought you were being dramatic. But then I found Mom's old photo albums while looking for baby pictures." She paused, twisting her wedding ring. "There are literally 5 times more photos of me than you." 5 times, Morgan, I counted. It was such a small thing, yet so telling. And then I started noticing how they talk about us. How everything I do is amazing and everything you do is, I don't know, politely acknowledged at best. "I've been saying this for years," I said quietly. "I know. I just didn't want to see it." She placed a hand on her rounded belly. "But now, thinking about my own child, I don't want to perpetuate this. I don't want my kid growing up in this toxic dynamic." For the first time in our adult lives, Stephanie and I had a genuine conversation. She shared how our parents' excessive praise had created its own burden, how she'd always felt she couldn't make mistakes or show weakness. I explained how their constant comparison had damaged my self-worth for years. "They don't know I'm here," she admitted as she prepared to leave. "They'd be furious, but I miss my sister, and I'm sorry, Morgan. I really am." It was a small step, but a meaningful one. We didn't become best friends overnight, but a door had opened for a different kind of sister relationship, one based on mutual respect rather than competition. My parents remained more resistant to change. When Christmas invitations went out, I again declined politely but firmly, explaining that we needed acknowledgement of the wedding situation before resuming holiday traditions. My father called it emotional blackmail. My mother said I was tearing the family apart. Neither could see that the tear had happened long ago, and I was simply refusing to pretend otherwise. Ryan and I spent Christmas with his family again, then hosted a New Year's party with our friends, creating new traditions to replace those that no longer served us. With each passing month, the ache of family estrangement dulled slightly, not disappearing, but transforming into something I could carry without being crushed by it. On our first anniversary, we returned to the plaza for dinner, both of us emotional as we revisited the site of our beautiful, complicated wedding day. "If you could go back," Ryan asked as we sipped champagne, "would you do anything differently?" I considered the question carefully. I would have recognized sooner that their absence was inevitable. They couldn't celebrate me fully because that would mean acknowledging their pattern of favoritism. And that was too threatening to their self-image as perfect parents, he finished. "Exactly," I touched my glass to his, "but I wouldn't change standing my ground." That was the real beginning of our marriage, choosing authenticity over appearances, substance over status. A week later, I sent my parents a carefully packaged wedding album. Inside, I included a note. Love shouldn't be conditional. Family shouldn't have favorites. I'll always have space in my life for you, but only if you can love the real me, not the smaller version of myself I pretended to be for so long. The door remains open whenever you're ready to walk through it differently. I had no expectation of response, no fantasy of a tearful reconciliation, but for the first time, their response, or lack thereof, wouldn't define my worth. I had finally stepped fully into my own light, no longer afraid of outshining anyone. And in that light, I could see the path forward clearly, whether they chose to join me on it or not. 6 months after our first anniversary, I sat across from Dr. Samara, the therapist I'd been seeing weekly since before the wedding. Sunlight streamed through her office window, illuminating the space where I'd shed so many tears and experienced so many breakthroughs. "You seem different today," she observed, studying me over her reading glasses. "I feel different," I admitted. "Lighter, somehow." We had been working through my family trauma systematically, the childhood memories, the wedding betrayal, the complicated grief of estrangement. Today, we were discussing the approaching holiday season and my decision to decline my parents' Thanksgiving invitation for the second year in a row. "It wasn't even hard to say no this time," I explained. "Last year, I felt guilty for weeks. This year, I just feel clear. I won't participate in a family gathering where the underlying issues remain unaddressed." "That's significant progress," Dr. Samara noted. "You're making decisions based on your values rather than fear of disapproval." The invitation had come via text from my mother 3 days earlier, Thanksgiving dinner at 3. "Stephanie and Bradley are bringing the baby. Your place will be set. No acknowledgement of our estrangement. No mention of the wedding. Just the expectation that I would fall back in line." My response had been polite but firm. "Thank you for the invitation, but Ryan and I have other plans this year. I hope you have a lovely holiday." The flurry of messages that followed, accusations of stubbornness, guilt trips about family duty, reminders that my new nephew would be there, had bounced off me like rain from an umbrella. I recognized them for what they were, attempts to manipulate me back into the old dynamic. "Have you heard from Stephanie recently?" Dr. Samara asked. "Yes, actually. That's been the most unexpected development of all. 2 months after her surprise visit to our apartment, Stephanie had given birth to a healthy boy named James. The first photos she sent showed a tiny, red-faced infant in a blue cap, looking perpetually startled as newborns do. What shocked me wasn't the baby himself, but the fact that Stephanie had reached out directly, separate from our parents. Since then, we'd established a cautious, limited relationship. Coffee every few weeks, usually while James napped in his stroller. Careful conversations that avoided our parents initially, then gradually began to touch on our shared childhood from our different perspectives. "She came by yesterday without telling Mom and Dad," I told Dr. Samara. "She said something that really struck me. She said, 'I always thought having parents who thought I was perfect would be wonderful, but it's actually a prison. I'm terrified of disappointing them.' The irony wasn't lost on either of us, how the golden child and the scapegoat had both been damaged by the same family system, just in different ways. "Do you think your relationship with Stephanie can heal completely?" Dr. Samara asked. I considered this carefully. I don't know if completely is possible, or even the right goal. Too much has happened. But I think we can build something new, something healthier, with better boundaries. We're both motivated now, especially with James in the picture. Stephanie had confided her fears about unconsciously replicating our parents' patterns with her son, particularly if she had a second child someday. "I don't want any child of mine feeling like they're in second place," she'd said, echoing my own words back to me. As for my parents, the situation remained largely unchanged. The wedding album I'd sent had elicited a brief, stiff note from my father. "The photos are well composed. Perhaps someday you'll understand that our absence was for your own good." That for your own good had sparked a week of rage that I worked through in therapy and with Ryan's unwavering support. The audacity of reframing their punitive absence as somehow beneficial to me represented exactly the kind of emotional manipulation I was working to identify and reject. There had been scattered contact since then, obligatory birthday calls, the occasional family update email, but no acknowledgement of the deeper issues, no recognition of the pain they'd caused, no indication that anything would ever change. I've been thinking about forgiveness, I told Dr. Samara now. Not reconciliation. I understand those are different things, but forgiveness for my own sake. What does forgiveness look like to you in this context? Letting go of the fantasy that they'll ever be the parents I needed, accepting that they may never acknowledge the favoritism or their actions around the wedding. Not because what they did was okay, but because holding on to the anger is only hurting me. She nodded encouragingly. That's a profound insight, Morgan. I realized something during meditation last week, I continued. I've spent so much energy wishing for parents who could see and celebrate me fully. But I actually have that now, in Ryan's parents, in our friends, in the family we're creating around us. The hole isn't filled by the people who created it, but it's filling nonetheless. 1 year and 6 months after our wedding, Ryan and I celebrated Christmas in our apartment, hosting a gathering of friends and chosen family. Ryan's parents drove in from Chicago. Allison and her husband brought their new puppy. Even Stephanie came for dessert after spending the day with our parents, bringing baby James in a ridiculous reindeer onesie. As I looked around our living room, filled with laughter, genuine affection, and not a hint of the walking on eggshells tension that characterized my childhood holidays, I felt a sense of peace wash over me. My wedding day trauma had been the breaking point, yes, but also the breakthrough. The moment when I finally understood that I deserved better, and more importantly, that better was possible. Later that night, after everyone had gone, and Ryan and I sat quietly by our twinkling Christmas tree, he took my hand. Penny, for your thoughts? I was thinking about our future children, I said softly. How we'll make sure they never doubt they're loved exactly as they are. How we'll celebrate their differences, instead of pitting them against each other. How we'll never use our presence or absence as emotional leverage. Ryan's eyes glistened in the dim light. They'll never question their worth because their mother knows her own. The path to healing wasn't linear. There were still difficult days, triggered memories, moments of grief for the family relationships I wished I had. But with each passing month, I became stronger, clearer, more firmly anchored in my own worth. 2 years after our wedding, I looked through our album again, this time seeing beyond the empty seats in the family row. Instead, I noticed the radiance in my eyes as I walked myself down the aisle, not abandoned, but self-possessed. I saw the circle of friends who surrounded us with genuine love. I recognized the moment not as a loss, but as the first day of a life where I would no longer shrink myself to make others comfortable. My parents' absence from my wedding had been meant as punishment, but it became a perverse gift instead, the final push I needed to break generational patterns of emotional manipulation and conditional love. In refusing to make my wedding less flashy than my sister's, I wasn't just insisting on prettier centerpieces or a more prestigious venue. I was demanding the right to be celebrated fully, to take up space unapologetically, to shine without dimming myself. If you're watching this and struggling with family dynamics that diminish you, please know you're not alone. Your worth isn't determined by those who can't or won't see it clearly. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do, for yourself and future generations, is to stand firmly in your truth, even when that means standing alone. I'd love to hear your experiences in the comments below. Have you ever had to make a difficult choice between family expectations and your own needs? What boundaries have helped you build healthier relationships? Please like this video if it resonated with you. Subscribe for more stories about navigating complex family dynamics, and share with anyone who might need to hear that they deserve to shine without apology. Thank you for witnessing my journey. Remember that healing is possible, that chosen family can be as meaningful as blood, and that sometimes the most beautiful beginnings emerge from the most painful endings. I'm sending strength and clarity to each of you, wherever you are in your own story.